Easy!
Obviously, you see my name, it's Korodecim, and you're probably wondering, what does this actually mean? You just throw some random words together. And basically, yeah, that is exactly what I did. So as many of you may not know, I'm actually a psychology student. I'm going into my third year of psychology in September. I've been studying psychology probably since around grade 7 because I've always wanted to be some sort of therapist or psychologist or something in the field of psychology. In my fourth year, I have to make my own thesis. Obviously, I'm not going to do it on this because there's no real background to this. This is just something I've come up with myself, and I attempt to prove it as real one day. But I'm here to explain exactly what my name means and a bit of the backstory behind it. So, Korodecim, it means the balance between logic and emotion. And you're probably wondering, okay, that's cool. Where'd you get those two words from? Well, Koro, I define it as logic, and Decim, I define it as emotion. Koro comes from anime. If you watch anime, you've probably seen it. It's from Assassination Classroom. And Decim, it also comes from another anime called Death Grade. If you watch anime, you've seen it as well. Ignore that sound in the background. I won't go into the full background of what each word means and the complete background, but just enough so you understand. So the purpose of Korodecim is essentially what I believe to be everyone's goal in life. When they're in a situation, they want to choose the correct way to respond to it, either emotionally or logically. Sometimes this process is subconscious, but a lot of the time it's conscious. So I have devised my theory into sort of 4 rows of a flowchart. The first row being Korodecim, the balance between logic and emotion. And then from that stems Koro and Decim, and from that is the third row. So it's said throughout history that humans are made up of 7 deadly sins, or 7 deadly desires, those being greed, lust, wrath, pride, envy, lust, just said lust twice, gluttony, and sloth. Well, it's never been scientifically proven we actually think like that. For the sake of this, I do believe that humans are in fact made up of this. Of course, there's more to it, but our mind thinks in these 7 categories. So depending on which side of the flowchart you're on, the logic side or the emotional side, it'll have the prefix of Koro or Decim. Say it's Koro pride, it just means you use your pride logically. Or if it's Decim pride, you use your pride emotion. Something that I failed to mention in my original explanation was what each 7 sin mentalities actually meant. While it maybe seem obvious for some of them, like lust, greed, sloth, or envy, there's a bit more to some of them. Pride, for example, is typically your self-esteem, but it can also relate to how smart you are, what you enjoy doing in life, essentially your overall happiness and what makes you happy. Imagine each sin as most broad it can be. And you're probably thinking, okay, what are you trying to get at? So I call these sin mentalities, and every person has a dominant mentality, which is essentially the way you typically think. So if your sin mentality is Koro pride, it means you think in certain ways that relate to pride. Rather basic. But pride just doesn't mean pride in oneself. It's just a general term that can relate to being smart, being good at a certain math thing, having pride in yourself, and simply being related to happiness. While some of these are simply just straightforward, things like lust isn't just about sex. It can be about building relationships with others and caring for one another. I won't go too far into detail, but you should have a general idea of what greed, lust, wrath, pride, envy, gluttony, and sloth would cover in real life. So while there are essentially 14 sin mentalities, as you can see on the screen, you're probably wondering, well, how is one of these determined? Out of all the 14 different sin mentalities, how do we know which one's ours? We don't know our sin mentality right away, but the more natural occurrences in life where we learn to think and deal with emotions in a certain way creates what I call a component. A component is essentially just a subsection of one of the sin mentalities. As we gain more components, it becomes clear which mentality we have, as one of the 14 will have a lot more components than the others. But you're probably thinking, okay, Korodecim, Mitchell, whatever you want to call me, what does this actually mean? What's the purpose of your theory? Well, it's rather simple. The entire point of this is to eventually make this conscious process a subconscious one, like breathing. When faced with a situation, we want to be able to respond correctly to it, and by relating back to these components and acting based on what that component taught you. Say, for example, you're mad. You're driving on the road, someone cuts you off, you're like, God damn it, I'm gonna kill that guy. You would want to choose if you want to act emotionally or logically to that situation. Say you choose logically. You go to Koro Wrath, and you could choose a component that is suitable for the situation. Over time of doing this over and over again, it becomes a subconscious process, and you automatically deal with an emotion based on the components you have. But let's say you don't have any components, you're still rather young, you don't have that many life experiences. But before that even, you're probably wondering, how do you get this life experience? Well, for me, I mainly got all mine from anime. It sounds cheesy, but you can essentially get it from anything in life, whether it's a song, a movie, a show, someone you're talking to, an inspirational speaker, literally anything in the world. Anything that teaches you how to deal with a certain emotion can create a component. But let's say you don't have any components. You're still young. What are you going to do? Well, you're in luck. There's another process I like to call the 4 divine steps. Kind of a cheesy name, still a work in progress. But this has 4 steps if you couldn't tell by the name. You have to feel the emotion, don't be in denial, realize it is happening, and you have to contemplate the emotion. Think about it. Why is it happening? What did I do to get in this situation? You have to accept the emotion, accept that you can't avoid it, and that you have to face it right now. And then you have to know the emotion. Know what that emotion truly feels like. While that may be confusing, let's put it more simply. Say the most amount of stress you've ever felt was while you were presenting a project in class. And then you experienced stress another time in life, but it's not as bad as the presentation you did. You would feel the emotion, realize it's happening, and that is what you were experiencing. Then you would contemplate it. Why is it happening? Accepting it. Accept the situation you're in and you can't avoid it. And then you have to know it. Once you know what emotion you're feeling, you can compare it to the time you felt the most of that emotion. And know that if you were able to get past it originally, when you felt it the most, you're able to get past it now. And over time, by doing this over and over again, it'll eventually become a subconscious process where when you feel stress, your mind will automatically compare it to the situation where you felt it the most and deal with it itself. You're probably wondering, this is just a theory, isn't it? To some extent, it is. I myself have been using this probably since around grade 11. I used to have quite a bit of stress and anxiety. And when I started doing this process, comparing to the experience I had felt the most stress and anxiety, I was able to use this process subconsciously to handle all stress and emotion. While this all may seem confusing, you're right, it probably is. I'm still trying to figure it out all myself, and it probably won't be a very long time until it's actually a real thing. But if you understood any of what I said in this, which you might not have, that's okay. But if you have, I hope it helps you in your day-to-day life. Just remember, if you're feeling stress, compare it to the situation where you felt it the most. If you were able to get past it in that situation, you can do it now and you can get past the current situation as well. Anyways, that is the end of this video. Starting now, I'm going to be trying to take YouTube more seriously by creating a variety of different videos, but I just wanted to get a clear explanation of what my name means because a lot of people have a hard time pronouncing it. Anyways, I'll see you next time.